Hello, everybody, and welcome to Crossing Kin in the Crossing Kin Garage.
I'm sorry.
You're
Go ahead. Who
I'm
are you?
Kristen.
I'm Randy, and this is the Crossing King Garage, where everyone who comes is a part of the family.
We are knee deep in Spooky Month, and today we have a rather spooky character to talk about.
Count Dooku, Sherlock Holmes, Count Dracula, Saruman, Fu Manchu. Who in the world has played all of these characters and has a 70 plus year reign in Hollywood?
Christopher Lee. We mentioned it back in Star Wars Month that we wanted to do a retrospective on Sir Christopher Lee.
So, welcome to the Legacy of Lee.
Here at Crossing Camp. We're going to try our best to talk about his entire career as well as some rather awesome things that this man did in his life. Because, guys, Christopher Lee was kind of awesome.
Now, a
if
lot
you
of
didn't know.
I'm sorry, Kristen. A lot of you guys will remember, if you're my age, you'll remember him from Count Dracula. He was the one.
Well, we'll go through it here in a minute. I've got a lovely little list of
Kristen's
his.
got a list of roles, and they're each one of them are iconic. But he really defined Dracula
Oh yeah.
in a lot of ways. His version of Dracula was the first thing that a lot of people saw Christopher Lee in. But there is just role after role after role after role. Didn't he pass away last year?
No, it was just after the last Hobbit movie came out, so it was like 2017,
Okay, so it's
2016.
been some time since
It's been a
Christopher Lee
minute.
passed.
Wait, I actually got it written. It was 2015.
2015.
He was
Okay,
93 years old.
93, and he had spent the vast majority of those 93 years as an actor.
Hmm.
With how many credits did you say you found?
Over 200
200 films.
between film and television.
And granted, out of 200
And
films
television.
and television, there's going to be some bombs. I
Oh,
mean, there are. But the man's legacy is incredible. Salute.
salute, Sir Christopher Lee. I keep saying Sir because he was, in fact, a knight. He was like Sir Patrick Stewart and Sir Ian McKellen. He was a knight.
British actor, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Very British. Let's start with something very cool before we even get into his acting career. He served in World War II, I believe is what we found out. He was in the British Air Force, I
Okay.
believe is what you
Yep.
told me. Basically, he was James Bond. And he got up to some things, and we believe this simply because there is a very well known story of the behind the scenes of Return of the King. Everybody knows, Grima Wormtongue does the stabby stabby to Saruman. And in script, and Peter Jackson was instructing Christopher Lee to go, ah, scream, like one does when one gets stabbed. Christopher Lee looks Peter Jackson dead in the eyes and says, Peter, people don't scream when they get stabbed. They go, ugh.
How does he know this?
Peter Jackson kind of just looked at him and was like, okay, Christopher. So Christopher Lee got up to some stuff during the war.
Apparently,
Let's
he
just
knew
say
what
that.
the sound was of someone stabbing. Whether he perpetuated it himself or not leads, again, I mean, everything that we've read, Wikipedia and other sources, lends us to believe that he was a part of some of the Secret Service when he was in the military. And so,
Which is interesting because he was a step cousin to Ian Fleming. He also, Christopher Lee himself, was nearly made Swedish royalty because he was given permission to marry some Swedish royal woman
Princess,
and chose not to.
the man's life is fascinating.
He
It makes me want to go and
he
find
has
his biography
he
now.
has a heavy metal album. Like Christopher Lee he's somebody told him to pick a lane. He picked the entire road.
Yeah, over the entire world.
Over the entire world.
Every road.
The man could
Every
not
road.
be stopped, and nor would I want to stop him. But from what I can tell from interactions, he also knew Tolkien. I forgot to say that. He knew J.R.R. Tolkien. J.R.R. Tolkien told him that when there was a film made of Lord of the Rings, he wanted him to play Gandalf. Wrong wizard, but we did still get him in Lord of the
I
Rings.
could see him in that role. I
Yeah.
mean, I could see him in the role. I could see him in the role of the good guy. However, most of the time, if you look at his filmography,
Mr. Lee veered towards the villain.
he veered towards the bad guy. He really did.
And
I
he
mean,
did it well.
if you look, you know, and we're going to talk
We're going
more
to
and
talk
more,
more.
especially about the modern day iterations of who Christopher Lee was, the more iconic films that he's done of recent years, when he was in his late 70s, early 80s, and even up into his 90s. The man was in some blockbuster franchises.
All right, but we are going to start off with his first couple of roles. His very first acting credit, according to our friends at IMDb. Now, let me say this now. Thank you, IMDb, for having such thorough records. Without you, I would not have been able to find all of this. We are not sponsored by you, but if you would ever like to sponsor us here at Cross and Kin, we would very, very, very happily be sponsored by you. Thank you, IMDb. But anyway, Christopher Lee's very first acting credit was on a television show called Kaleidoscope. He
Okay.
was in 2 episodes. Don't know. His character was unnamed. There was no character name listed. And he was in 2 different episodes over 2 separate years, in 1946 and in 1947, respectively.
Kaleidoscope was one of those TV shows, kind of like Twilight Zone.
Okay.
Yeah, the Twilight Zone, where
The character name wasn't mentioned.
everybody in Hollywood came through the Twilight Zone.
Okay. So it was like the British Twilight Zone?
Exactly. It wasn't, that show wasn't necessarily storyline like Twilight Zone, but it was a television show that featured, just featured actors like crazy. It was a variety of actors every time. I don't remember much about the show itself.
Okay.
It was just a kaleidoscope of actors. If you
All
will.
right. His first film role was in something called Corridor of Mirrors. He played Charles, and that was in 1948. After that, he began pretty much taking any role that came along. When I was scrolling through his IMDb page, I saw a lot of professors, I saw a lot of dukes. When I looked at them, they were listed as bad guys. I did not have enough paper to write down every single Christopher Lee role, nor do we have the time to run through every single Christopher Lee role. Considering the man's proclivity for playing monsters, I decided it would be a good idea to write those down. So here we go.
And it is spooky month after all.
It is spooky month. Hence why we did Christopher Lee's retrospective this month, because the man has a nice big thick paragraph about this big for just his monster roles. So his first ever monster role was in a film called The Curse of Frankenstein in 1957, where he played the creature. I'm assuming that means he was Frankenstein's monster.
Probably.
His next one was in a film called The Horror of Dracula in 1958, where he played the titular Count Dracula. Then the next year, he played the Mummy in a version of The Mummy, which, oh my. Then then we skipped a few years, and in 1966, he played Rasputin in Rasputin the Mad Monk. Gregory Rasputin, some people view him as kind of a ghost, so that's why I kept him in. I know Rasputin was a real life historical figure, but he is also somewhat considered a ghost in certain lores. Then we have a lovely string where he just plays Dracula. Like a very lovely string.
How many films did you count?
Let's see.
This is the role that most of people my age see him in, and we're introduced to him in
8.
8
I've
times
got
he
8,
played Dracula.
I believe.
Other than even
if we're counting the Count Dracula from 58 and the Horror of Dracula, we've got 8.
Wow.
8 counts of Dracula.
Probably more than anybody else, maybe other than perhaps Bela Lugosi.
Yeah. 8 counts of Dracula. The last time he played Dracula was in 1976. The man played Dracula for almost 20 years.
That's what he was known for until,
during, in between all of his Draculas, he also played Sherlock Holmes on 3 separate occasions and Mycroft Holmes once. I don't have the dates or the names of all of those. I didn't have enough room to write them, but 3 times he played Sherlock Holmes, Mycroft Holmes once. The only one he didn't play was John Watson out of that trio. And let's just be honest, there's no way anybody could imagine Christopher Lee as a John Watson. I can't. I can't.
Versatile actor, but I mean, if you look at the
It didn't help that he was 6 foot something.
true, if you look at the entirety of the roles that he played, he really navigated towards the bad guys.
But Daddy's most well-known character for Mr. Lee is Scaramanga from Man with the Golden Gun. This was one of Roger Moore's, right?
One of Roger Moore's. It was not a great Bond film.
But he was a great villain.
He was a very good villain. He
He's-
was a very good villain. As in a lot of ways, Christopher Lee really redeemed that film for a lot of folks. The whole storyline, there are a lot of folks who don't like Roger Moore's films. That was the Bond that I was introduced to. They are kind of campy. They are kind of, but they're
Out
Bond
there.
films. And Scaramanga was the redeeming baddie in this. He is one of the best bads in all of the James Bond filmography, and it was fitting that he played the role just deliciously.
Yes, he did.
And very, very good. Very good. But I also love him later on for some of the other things that he's done. Bond was really probably, other than Count Dracula, which I knew about, but really just we don't do horror here in the Crossing King Garage, so I really wasn't invested that much on the Count Dracula. But when he hit a Scaramanga, that's when I started paying attention to Christopher Lee.
And then he donned a white robe and a white wig and a very scary looking staff. And he was Saruman.
Was that before?
Saruman was just before. It was very funny. It went Fellowship, Two Towers, Attack of the Clones, Return of the King, Revenge of the Sith. He was playing Saruman at the same time he was playing Count Dooku. It was awesome. The early 2000s were the reign of Christopher Lee.
He came into a generation, Kristen's generation, in fact, and they know Christopher Lee because of Lord of the Rings and Star Wars.
And we love him.
Very, very. I mean, the thing about it is, in Star Wars, you almost see the internal struggle that he has
Well,
going on.
I mean, here's the thing. Count Dooku is a tragic character.
Exactly. Yeah.
He was mentored by Qui-Gon, and then because of the council basically not listening to anything
Qui-Gon had to
Dooku
say,
and
yeah.
Qui-Gon had been saying for years, Qui-Gon winds up dead, which anybody who knows what the master Padawan dynamic is, it's a father-son relationship
Sure.
or a parent-child relationship a lot of the time. Dooku had family, yes, he's a count. That title is not just some hubris.
Right.
That is a legitimate title. He was royalty on his planet before he went and became a Jedi. But Qui-Gon was probably the only close person he had to him, so he lost it due to the hubris of the council, and then Sidious got in his ear. And Sidious had probably been in his ear for a while before that. Qui-Gon dying was the straw that broke the camel's back and just kind of pushed him all the way. And so, but then what he thinks is the right thing. He thinks he's trying to overthrow the Jedi more to bring balance to the Force. And then he forgets about the rule of two when Sidious is trying to recruit Anakin. But I mean, Dooku had already been disrespectful to the rule of two because he mastered Ventress.
And none of it would have been possible without Christopher Lee.
None of it.
I mean, it just wouldn't have been possible.
Christopher
There's no
Lee.
other actor that probably could have pulled this off as well, and as believably. But let's go back to Lord of the Rings, which
Yes.
was
We'll go back to Star Wars again in a minute. But
earlier,
Lord of the Rings it for a minute.
big time ensemble cast. It seems as he was getting older, he again was drawn towards those ensemble casts where he didn't have to carry the entirety of the film like he had done with his Dracula roles or anything like that. He became satisfied with being that supporting actor, and he did it beginning in Bond, even with Scaramanga, that he carried those out in such a professional an exquisite way that he kept getting callbacks and callbacks and callbacks. And again, personally, he knew Tolkien, but I can't imagine him. I can imagine him as a Gandalf, but he was so much better as a Saruman.
He was wonderful as a Saruman. I think his voice lent itself to some of the epic speeches
Certainly,
Saruman has to
certainly.
give.
And
Like
his voice lent itself to being the bad guy.
he doesn't have, this sounds mean. He doesn't have a warm voice. He has a very Earl Bowen classic Shakespearean type voice, which he has a king voice. He doesn't have the kind old grandpa voice. He has a commanding kingly
Oh, without doubt.
voice.
And
So
I
that
think
lent itself.
just perfect casting in Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. And he
And
didn't show up in The Hobbit. That
yes, he did. He was
okay,
part of the White Council.
understood.
Those were
Yes,
his
yes, yes,
last
yes,
roles, in
yes.
fact. Him
Right,
being part of the White Council, helping to banish the necromancer.
right,
Though bless him, he was in such poor health at the time that all of the White Council stuff couldn't be filmed in New Zealand. So everybody who needed to be part of those scenes came. I want to say they filmed it at 007
Pinewood.
Pinewood. I
Yeah,
want to say they filmed the White Council stuff and the defeating of the Necromancer stuff at Pinewood, because that was closer to where Christopher Lee could make it. But I mean, the man was 90 something years old when they
right.
were filming that stuff.
Incredible,
They filmed all,
incredible.
as far as I know, they filmed all of the stuff that they needed Christopher for
At one
in like
time,
that
certainly.
weekend,
Yeah,
so that they didn't want to tax him. I mean, they were all his old friends. They loved him. They wanted to, take care of him as best they could. So I think they did the same for Ian Holm as
right.
well, because he had a part in both of those, in the first and last Hobbit films, and I think they went ahead and filmed all of his stuff uh quickly at Pinewood so that Ian also didn't have to be overly taxed, which he also died shortly after filming of The Hobbit
Yeah,
was concluded.
yeah.
Same with Christopher Lee. Like I think he passed just before Battle of the Five Armies came out.
Regardless,
Reg-
he popped as a star in the 40s and 50s, did his military stuff. He has reappeared in the 70s with Roger Moore's Bond, and then in the 90s and 2000s, his star just went crazy.
As soon as he was done with Lord of the Rings, Star Wars really took off with him as well. Not only was he in the two live action films he provided the voice for the Clone Wars theatrical
Right,
release. He
right.
didn't do it in Clone Wars the show, because that Cartoon Network couldn't have afforded Christopher Lee every
No.
week. But that theatrical release could. So he did Count Dooku's voice in the couple of. It's only a couple of scenes. Like, he wouldn't have needed to spend a lot of time on it, but he did do the voice work for Dooku in the film. Something very awesome about his role as Dooku. He did all of his own sword fighting.
Wow.
All of his own lightsaber choreography.
That's cool.
Every last bit of it. He went through the same training as Ewan and Hayden
At
did.
probably 86, 87
At
years old. Yeah.
probably 86, 87, maybe late 70s at the time. They would have been filming that in like late 90s.
Yeah.
So yeah, he would have been in his 60s at the time of having to do that training.
Well,
But I mean, his main fight was against CGI Yoda, so he just had to be like cool and not look ridiculous while a little gremlin was jumping all around him.
in the same vein that he redeemed that Bond film, he really
Oh my gosh,
redeemed
yes.
the prequels in a lot of ways.
Him and his curved red lightsaber.
Just that Dooku character is one of those. Yeah, Kristen said it. He's a sympathetic character because you see the internal struggle that he has, and I would love for Dave Filoni
Further exploration like they did
in
with Tales of the
Dooku.
Jedi.
Don't not even necessarily. I think you could make a live action just off of Dooku's story
And expand on what they did with Tales.
exactly.
I agree.
Do an expanded deal. I'm not sure who you would cast. That might be a crossing Kim for another day. But
That would be hard.
I think you get Filoni involved. It's one of those things that you in the Star Wars universe, as far as the prequels go, which are not beloved like 4, 5, and 6 are, but you could do some things that really do bring a Mandalorian type, aspect to it, or it would unpack a very, very complicated character and explain some things.
Maybe redeem the Jedi after the Acolyte just pretty much made them out to be the bad guys. We're not done with Mr. Lee just yet. He is also one of Tim Burton's favorite people.
That's true. Yeah.
He was in The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. I don't remember who he played, but he was there. He was in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. No, it was Charlie.
Charlie and the Chocolate
It was
Factory.
Charlie. I get them confused. I'm sorry. It was Charlie in the Chocolate Factory as Mr. Wonka. He was Willy Wonka's dad. He was Johnny Depp's dad. It was the most awkward scenes. He was. This makes me mad. He was supposed to be in Sweeney Todd, the Tim Burton Sweeney Todd. He was going to be the one that sings the opening ballad of Sweeney Todd.
Wow.
It was going to be this epic thing set in a graveyard. It was going to be all of Sweeney Todd's victims singing Attend the Tale of Sweeney Todd. It was going to be him and Giles from Buffy.
Okay.
Basically leading this chorus of the victims of Sweeney Todd. And it was going to be remixed a little bit as almost maybe a little bit more guitar-y. Like it wasn't going to be quite the Broadway. It was going to be an epic moment. And the only reason it didn't happen, I'm convinced, is it might have been a little spoilery for the end of the musical, because if you know the musical, then you know that Sweeney himself actually sings it. There's a line that says, "What happens next? Well, that's the play," and he wouldn't want us to give it away. So it's a little fourth wall breaky. It's Tim Burton. Nobody cares if you break the fourth wall. The only reason it didn't happen is because it would have been so epic, it would have melted the screen.
I don't know about that, but
it would have. He was supposed to be in Sweeney Todd and wasn't, and we were robbed of that. Broadway fans were robbed of that. But he was also a voice in a couple of the Tim Burton animated stuff. I know he was in Corpse Bride. I think he was in a couple of the other Tim Burton things. Alice in Wonderland was the last thing that I know he did. He was the voice of the Jabberwocky, which, Mr. Burton, we need to have a conversation.
It's the Jabberwock.
It's the Jabberwock. Jabberwocky is the name of the poem. The creature is the Jabberwock. Just
consider yourself correct.
Research better. But Mr. Lee, and then like you alluded to, he played Fu Manchu several times throughout his career. But
back in a time when a British actor could get by with playing an Asian person.
But I mean, he did his best, and like I said, he did it multiple times. Like that was one of those things I kept on seeing when I was scrolling through his IMDb. What is funny on his IMDb page? Now, I do have his official final role written here, but I do want to say on his IMDb page, he has 2 upcoming roles. They do not have release dates, and I believe they are only voiceover stuff that maybe he recorded years ago before he died.
So the legacy of Lee continues.
But they've not been released yet. He has releases after his death, up to 2017. And in fact, I believe his official final role, like this movie is so small, the only thing it has to it is that it's the final film of Christopher Lee. It has 2 pieces of trivia on IMDb, and one of them is the fact that it's his final film. The description of this film on IMDb literally says, "The final film of Christopher Lee." It's not available to stream anywhere. I looked. It is called The Angels of Notting Hill. I read its premise. I can't begin to explain its premise. Just go to IMDb and read it for yourself. It sounds weird, but I mean, that's where Christopher Lee was.
That's where he was.
At the end of his career.
That's where he was at the beginning of his career. He loved the macabre. He loved the weird. He loved the bad guys.
I love him for it.
And we love this actor for it. We're sorry that he is no longer around to continue. We'd love to see how he winds up in Rings of Power. I mean, we've already begun seeing some of those.
I don't think we've met him.
Mentions, no, but he's been mentioned. Alluded to
is a better way to phrase it. We're still waiting on official Saruman to come through. Right. I do not think we have met him yet, but since we have Gandalf properly now, Saruman has to be right around the corner.
Close.
He has
close
to be.
by. Close by.
So
We
that's
we
it.
love Christopher Lee. I mean,
The man had an epic life.
we're not one of those that is going to go back and watch his entire
No.
filmography.
We
However, we
take
have our
too
favorites, including The Lord of the Rings,
Star Wars.
Hobbit, and Star Wars. And we support especially those actors who are in their prime time, in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s even, who continue to entertain and continue to milk their craft, so to speak, mold their craft, and be as absolutely good as they can possibly be for millions and millions of people to be entertained, and enjoy. So, for that, that's why we have The Legacy of Lee from the Crossing King Garage.
That is it for today. Please let us know if there was a major Christopher Lee role that I missed. Please let me know if my count of 8 Draculas was off. I think I got them all, but if I missed one, please let me know.
Or perhaps there's an iconic aspect of Christopher Lee that we didn't mention.
Yeah.
We were surprised to find out that he was in Her Majesty's Secret Service, so to speak, and that his other, just some of those quirky things, the comment to Peter Jackson about stabbing, there's just a fascination. And if you have a favorite biography of Christopher Lee, an autobiography that you are aware of, please send us that link also in the comments. We'd love to have the opportunity to read about this majestic actor who has an incredible, incredible legacy in Hollywood.
And please let us know some other actors you would like us to do this kind of deep dive on. Like
Certainly.
I love doing research on people and finding out curious things about them. He had a heavy metal album and nearly became Swedish royalty. Like,
who knew?
All
and
the
it's and I
spectrum,
mean
Mr. Lee.
the knowledge that he was a friend of, or at least an acquaintance of Tolkien, and that he was a step cousin to Ian Fleming and would have known Ian Fleming, possibly. There's just someone who lives a life that long is certainly going to have some relationships that are a little bit more than the 60 degrees of separation, and so it's fascinating to see just how life in and of itself brings us in and out of people, and people that we know, people who we know well, people we don't know so well, people that we enjoy honing their craft as he did.
But until next time, that is all for us here in the Crossing Kin Garage. We will be back in 2 weeks with another brand new video for you guys, so be sure you come back for that.
And that's spooky month here from the Crossing Kin Garage. Sir. Don't forget to go watch The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. Don't forget to go watch Arsenic and Old Lace.
And our Spooky Month playlist.
Our Spooky Month playlist that is floating somewhere above our heads.
One of our heads.
Yeah. So check those out. Make sure that you tell a friend to come and be a part of the family here at Crossing Kin.
And we will see you. Make sure you like. Make sure you share. Make sure you subscribe and
ring that notification bell
so that you know every time we upload. And we will see you in 2 weeks. And until then, I'm Kristen.
And I'm Randy.
Bye.
Later.